So my name is Ricardo. I'm running Solid Apps agency, and also I have about 6 years of experience building, and I'm here to share with you one one work that we did last month with agnostic database, where we were able to like have a massive app simplification using that approach. So the agenda today will be what is agnostic data or database approach? What is the regular database design? I'll talk about regular database design, agnostic database design, the results that we were able to get. And if we have time, I also want to give you 3 unrelated tips, the pop-up variables, how to convert text to JSON, which is useful for processing AI responses in other cases, and also a tip on how to get access to native mobile model, partnering with our agency. So what is agnostic database approach? If you Google this, you see that the data agnostic means that the device or program can work with data from different sources and formats. And in application software development, a data agnostic service can pass any type of data. So what it means that the data, both in the database and in the workflows, can be processed regardless their meaning or their format. We have some examples of data agnostic platforms, that is like XML, JSON, all that stuff uses data agnostic approach. So when we talk about regular database design, usually we have meaningful table with a meaningful fields. So this is a sample how we can design a database to like model projects. So if you want to store data about a project, we may have a project table with project name and main contact name and the company. And for the company, usually we have another table with the name and address and other data of the company. We may need to track the country with the name, flag icon, the status of the project, and a list of team members with name and role. So this is a regular database schema. And here's a small caveat. We use like this gear icon to identify fields that is filled by a database trigger. So in this database, for instance, what we do is when the status changes to inactive, we run a database trigger that sets the inactive date. So the developer doesn't need to fill this field, and it's automatically filled by a database trigger. Right? So this is a regular database design. But what if you have to store medical data from the whole life of a patient? So if you need to store data about their identification as name, SSN, birthday, country, gender, race, and other measures, height, weight, waist, hip, if his birth from a cesarean section, they had complications when birth, what was the birth weight, what was the Apgar. During the life, they have asthma, arthritis, anxiety, stroke, and any of 189 illness list. And beside these, record also all the medications that they take, the pains that they feel, hospital admissions, habits, skin lesions, data about how they feel over their sexuality, family history, supplements they take, clinical exams that they have done, daily diet, and etc. So that was the case we faced with, and that is our app. This is an app in Portuguese. Our customer is in Brazil in that case, and this is how it was designed. So we didn't build the app from scratch. The app was built by the client, the founder of the company. And here we have data about identification, like SSN, Brazilian SSN, race, country of birth, date of birth, gender, and other stuff. And for any of those sections, we have more these quantity, this amount of fields of information to get. And that was the database they designed initially. So this used a regular database design, all right? So one field for each section of the app, like one table for each section of the app, like one table for identification, one table for measures, one table for hospital admissions, and so on, and one field for each data. So we have fields for date of birth, SSN number, gender, and every information that we are getting. So this is the approach they use it, all right? Meaningful table with meaningful fields. Let's take this sample here and see what we can do if we change that approach from the regular database design for an agnostic database design. So let's see what is an agnostic database design. Agnostic database design uses table, not two meaningful tables with not two meaningful fields. So in that example, we can do something like this. We have a project table that has a list of project data. And the project data just have two fields, one key and one value. And we may fill these fields with like key, project name, value, Performify, key, contact name, value, Ricardo, key, company name, sorry for the typo, solid apps, and so on. So that is agnostic database design. The point is it's not too useful as well because it's hard to work with this. So for most of cases, you will not use it. It's not a good approach. Except when you change this by this. So this was our approach to the same database. We have a table with questions, a table with question options, and a table with answer. So tables in pink are filled by the admin, and tables in blue filled by the user, right? You can see that in the question, we have the app section, we have the app page, we have the order, the title, title of the question. So the type of the question, it could be like a text question, a multiple choice question, a checkbox question, a drop-down question, initial value, placeholder, input mask. In the option, we have an internal reference, like we have the display in the option sets, and we have a text for the user, what will show to the user, and we have also the value when the option is a number. And as an answer, we have the question and a free answer that is a text, an option when it's a multiple choice question, and a date when it's a date. All right. So that's essentially our database design. So what was the result that we got when we apply this. This is our the original editor. So in this original editor, you can see that we have a field for the SSN in that case. So there is an input that's named SSN, and it's inside a group that is named demography inside the session body. We have another input here for date of birth, this one, another one for gender, this one, and one input for each of the data that we need to get from this app. It's summed about 1,500 front-end elements and 90 workflows. Because every time that the user hits a button to save the data, I need a specific workflow to save the data, the identification data inside the identification table, and put the SSN number inside the SSN field, the gender value inside the gender field, and so on. So that's why I have this number of elements. By applying that change in the database, we move it to this front-end element. So this is our entire element tree. And what we have is a repeating group with questions. So this is the repeating group with questions here. Inside this repeating group, I have a title of the question here, so SSN, and I have multiple inputs or source of information. The first one is a text. The second one is a number. The third one is a date. This one is a dropdown, and this one is checkboxes. Radio buttons. So what I do here is I take a list of questions, and then I show all the questions here. And based on the question type, I decided which input will be visible. So if the question has a text type, I only show the text input. If the question has a number type, I only show the number input. And inside those inputs, I can also configure stuff like placeholder, initial value, like colors, and other stuff that I can grab from the question table, right? And it turns our initial front end from 1,500 elements into 30 front end elements and about 10 workflows. And we were able to deliver a new admin tool to edit questions, options, and design. So as the questions are now stored in the database, the admin user has the ability to change the question title, the question type, the question options, and everything else without needing a developer to jump in and change the inputs or like change the text that was in hard code before. So yeah, that was the results, and I would give you a break right now. So have questions about these initial content here. Oh, sorry. Okay. So for questions about these initial stuff about agnostic database, and then we can use our last maybe 20 minutes for the other 3 unrelated tips. I can also jump into the app if you need. Let me show you. If you have any questions, please enter. You can enter in the So for instance, if we are here, so let me show you how we did it. Okay, how do I save the data? This is a very good question. So here is the app, and what we do here is the workflows to save the data. So essentially, we did everything with text. So when an input is changed, sorry, when an input is changed, what's that mean? When an input is changed, this is part of the tips that I have. We created a reusable, and that reusable has no front-end elements, all right? So it's a reusable that is just a functional reusable. And let me show you this to you. So what we do is when the input is changed, we triggered an event on that reusable, passing the question and the value of the input, all right? And that custom event will return a formatted data value. So this one is here. It's a reusable. There is no front end in the reusable, and the reusable has some custom events. So we use this just to call the custom events. And what it does is it returns the data as a formatted data, and then we record. And we record these in two different places. One is in the table answer. So we record every question and every answer in that table. But we also record in the patient for performance stuffs. So for performance sake, we record in the patient table as a formatted data. And that's how we record. So we record this as order, and then the name of the question, and the section that the question should be, and the answer. And we also establish if it should be shown in the summary or not. So let me bring here a screen with the app. Let me run the app so you can check it, how it works. Let me run as a user. This one. So we have here the summary. So this last piece of information here establish if we should show in the summary or not. So when we load the data, when the user logs in, what we do is we load that field, and that field has all the answers of the entire form. So everything is recorded here. And then we fill those values with this information. And the formatter usable, it receives a list of answers as a parameter. This is another tip here. So use like arrows to identify which parameters are inputs and which parameters are outputs. So it receives the patient, it receives the question, the answers, list of answers, and it um, it has an output that is the formatted data. So we use these formatter reusable to handle everything related with converting the data from, um, let me show you also our entire database design. That's more complex than that piece. That piece is the core of the stuff. So we have here like the answer and everything that manipulates the answer. We to convert it to a clinical data, we use that format. This is the entire database design, right? Including all the auxiliary tables and all the other stuff. So I don't know if I answer you, Timothy, but that's how we save the data. Let me just show you where we are saving. So we have this trigger register answer. And in that button here, here is yeah, here. Yeah, if I can use JSON format to store the data. Yeah, that's the next change we are planning to do. Exactly using JSON format to store, but the challenge there is we have good plugins that manipulate JSON in the front end, but manipulating JSON in the back end is not that easy. And I would take that moment to talk about another tip that I have that is exactly this: how to convert JSON text to JSON, because what we have here is a text, all right? So we can manipulate that text and compose a JSON easily with using arbitrary text. But after this, we'll need to pass that information to the backend, and from the backend to the front end, or like to the database, and from database to the front end, especially when we have lists. And here is a thing on how to do it. So we have this challenge with when applying AIs as well. So what we do is, like, when I'm integrating with ChatGPT or Anthropic or any other AI like this, they usually answer a JSON, and inside the JSON field, they answer with the actual answer. So let me show you what I mean. This is a regular answer, right, from AI agents. So they answer with a JSON that has the QSON ID, and then they send the result and the message ID, type, role, model, content type, text, and here is what matters. Here is the JSON that we want, but it came as a text, and then you need to convert it to JSON or to manipulate it. And if you are running front end, we have good plugins that you can apply, and then you convert it and you can grab that information. When you are in the backend, you can use a run code, Server code, it's an option. But when you have lists inside this, it becomes more complex. So in that case, it returns a list of emails. So it becomes more complex. The solution we found for this is creating a internal API call. So we call our service in a text to JSON stuff. We pass the text in the backend. What the backend does is this. It's pretty easy. Like whatever it receives, it returns. Here we have options like text. You can return as a structured JSON, and you can return other content type. So whatever it receives, it returns. It just creates, it just removes like escape characters and stuff, and then it returns to the API, and the API here has a structured structured data, right? But yeah, going back and answering your question, Timothy, we can use JSON for sure to save in the database. It's a more standard way to save the data, better approach, but also include some how I sanitize the data. This is a very good question, Magdiel, and a challenge that we are facing right now, specifically because we gave to the admin the ability to change the questions, right? So every time that they came here and they change a question title in our database is structured somehow. It's agnostic but structured. So we have the question here. So if they change the title, anything changes in terms of database. But our the field where we are saving this, that is here, the field where we are saving, sorry, let me check where it is. This field becomes like not working anymore, like it broke the code. And this is a challenge we are facing. We are implementing that solution through database trigger. So if the admin changes a question, we will need to pass through all the users and change all the data for like converting and including the proper value here. So if it changes from CPF to SSN, we'll need to change every user. And then we have two possibilities. One is run this for every user when a question change. In fact, three possibilities. The second one is run it when the user logs in. So in a question change, so we just flag the user, so we don't spend a lot of working units and we don't stress the server when the question change. We just flag the user to be updated, and then we run when the user logs in. And that flag also happens in a different way. Like we don't specifically flag the user. We record in the user the date of the last update of this field, and we record in another table the date of the last update of the system. So if it doesn't match, we rerun this calculation. And the third option is, instead of recording the data like this, and this works very fine with a JSON, instead of recording the data like this, we record the unique ID of the question. it's way more better for data consistency. The downsides are, first, it's not like friendly to read, and second, we'll need to make multiple requests to the database to read each value. And that's the downside that make it not probably not the best approach, not the approach that we will use. So we probably will implement one of the other two, like recalculating in advance or recalculating when the user logs in. So that's the idea on sanitizing. Any other questions? If not, I will move to the other two things. That is like converting text to JSON. So I already covered it. We use the API connector. We send the data as a text, and then we receive it back as a JSON. It's the easiest way to do this, I believe. Let me talk about pop-up variables. I hosted a session last year about pop-up variables, and people asked me to talk about it again this year. It's a stuff technique that we use in all pages that we develop. So, for instance, in this reusable, we have these pop-up variables where we store the data. Let me check another piece of content here where we have more variables. Yeah, here we have more variables. Let me also change again. Sorry. So we can have a sample in English. Let me use another app that is running in English, so I can show you how to do this. So this is our pop-up variables. The way we do is we create a pop-up. We call it pop-up variables, and we include inside that pop-up groups and repeating groups. Those groups has their specific types. So in that case, it's a number group. In that case, it's an option set. That one is a user. That one is a yes, no. Here is a text. So they have their type of data. Many times they have a value like this. Sometimes, let me check this one. Sometimes they have conditionals, all right? So for this group, for instance, it's a repeating group of athletes, and they have a default value, but they also have conditionals that change their value. And we use those groups as variables inside our app. So essentially, we include here everything that is needed to be loaded. If some data doesn't need to be loaded when the page is loaded, we left this empty. And when include a conditional, like when the specific group is visible, so the data source is that. So Bubble just go to the server, just go to the database to like fetch the data when the group is visible, and we reduce the workload units by doing this. We also have it also facilitates a lot the development, because when we are developing, like let's say that we are inside this thing here, and I want to include a text here. So, and I want some data that came from the database. Instead of starting with do a search and starting typing and figuring out what I need to do. If I type var, I have a list of variables with stuff that I already did the search. I already take from it in a mnemonical name. So we use standard naming conventions and try to keep the name very consistent. So we can select here. So var choice social or choice tag or testimonials, pictures. So I can select here, for instance, like var A/B test. So A/B test stats. So I can select anything that I need from here. It facilitates a lot the development. It avoids you to make two similar searches in the database in the same page. It facilitates your maintenance because if the app's not working because something is like pulling wrong data from the database, everything pulls from the database in the same place. So you have no challenge on realizing where is the do a search. The do a search is inside the pop-up variables, all right? And we do this also many times for the current user. And then let me show you one page here where we did it for the current user and talk about the advantages of it. Oh, let me reload it. So using a variable for the current user is good because you can easily implement a run as feature for admins. So here in the pop-up variable, I have a var user. So this is the current user, right? And what is the advantage of this? Like, I can easily create a button somewhere or a drop-down somewhere, run as another user, especially if it's a reusable. And then I pass this value. So I have this condition here. So if the current user role is admin and the URL parameter is not empty, I get the data from page URL and I run as another user, all right? So this is a very useful stuff to do when we start to build the app, because in the future, we probably need that feature. Like someone in the back office need to run as another user to fix some data, to like replicate some behavior, to change something, and you have the feature already done. So Luke is asking, what are the pros and cons between pop-up and floating groups for hidden variables? I've never used floating groups, and I choose pop-up by not a specific, not for any specific reason. The thing with pop-ups is they load all the data even when they are not visible, because other bubble elements just load data when they are visible. And that's not the case with pop-ups, and I believe not with floating groups as well. But there is no specific reason, look, to use the. Oh, Timothy used a hidden group in the main group. Yeah, but repeating groups doesn't load, or I would say that load all the data every time. Yeah, that's really, Timothy, that's a downside of using pop-up. Like when you use pop-up variables and you want to convert a group to a reusable or copy and paste in another table, you lost all the data connections. So it's amazing. It's like a it's a awful. You convert to a reusable and you have like 500 issues in your app, and then you need to reconnect it. So it's a big downside. And for sure, using groups inside the group, hidden groups, it's good. Um, but you need to ensure that the data will be loaded in that group, um, which at least like some years ago, it didn't happen to repeating groups were not visible. Um, and then we need to use like a 1 pixel per 1 pixel group that solves the issue. But yeah, there are a lot of different approaches that we may use. Um, One stuff that I used it before, not using anymore today anymore, and that's the pro of using the pop-up is being able to show debugging data. So with the pop-up, you can show the debugging data here, which is might be interesting depending on the project, depending on your um, approach. Yeah, Maxiel, yeah, and that's a very interesting point to touch. We had a session earlier today held by George Collier from Not Quite Unicorn agency. He talked about security issues in Bubble, or security, not issues, but security characteristics of Bubble, and how you can handle these and manage these and prevent these and build better apps. And this is a very relevant stuff because everything that is stored in a var here may be manipulated by the user before being sent to the backend. So if you store, let's say the example that George used in his session was if you store the amount of a transaction here before sending to, to payment in Stripe, the user can manipulate that value and send a lower value, for instance. If you store if you are a marketplace and you store the client ID of the shop or of the seller, in a structure like this or anywhere in the front end, the user can manipulate it and change the seller ID to their own ID. So they can like buy something and don't pay for it, or like pay for other people. And this is scary. And I recommend everyone that wasn't able to attend George Collier's session to watch this when it's available in YouTube, because they share very relevant information. The last thing that I'd like to talk to you, and I don't know how many of you already have access to the mobile model, native mobile model here, or doesn't have access. So many people already have access. Some doesn't have access yet. We have the access as a silver agency since October last year, and every app that is created by us, we can enable this access. So what we are doing is for people that want to start developing in mobile model, learning mobile model, we can partner with these people, we can create an app to these people, and we can enable the mobile model to them so they can have access, they can use it, they can try this and start learning. And when the mobile model is available to everyone, which may happen maybe in 3 months or 4, I don't know. They are saying these dates, at least internally. When it's available, you will be one step ahead. And the only thing that we ask is for these partners to put the app in some paid plan, so private plan at least. So this is the how we are doing this. I will create um, one more slide here with my contacts. So anyone that wants access to the mobile model or wants to talk about anything else can contact me. Thank you everyone for your attention. Hope that the knowledge I share can be useful for you. All right. See you guys. Thank you. Bye bye.